Good evening, everyone. I'd like to bring to order this regular meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to start off. We would all stand, and we'll have an invocation by Mrs. Kupka, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all here together to do the business of our community. Please give us the strength and the wisdom we need to make the hard decisions we need to make for our community. And please also give us the discernment and the grace to honor your name in how we conduct ourselves this evening. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mrs. Kupka, and thank you, everybody. Mr. Miller, any amendment to the agenda today?
Yes, sir. So I think as I indicated in my email to you, this room is not available. This boardroom is not available on the 21st because of the primary election, and Ms. Gump needs the facility. There was a change in the laws that occurred and did not get noticed to us. And so we need to ask that you amend the agenda to adjourn to a different night than the 21st.
So our amendment is to our adjournments to the 14th. I would assume we would need to make a motion to cancel the meeting. Is that a correct assessment?
So you actually, we had a issue, I think, I don't know if I'm trying to think if I included that in there, but the 15th is what we need to do with the public hearing. We submitted the request and the notification to the Freelance Star on Thursday, the 2nd. They were not able to get it in today, which would have been required for it to be held on the 14th. So therefore, we're asking that you move your public hearing to the 15th. And then because of that, you would obviously have to move your board meeting to another night. And it just so happens you can't meet here anyhow on the 21st. So I guess you're at the end of the meeting, you would adjourn make a motion to the 15th, and then you would have your meeting set for the 22nd or whatever.
If I may, at the meeting in the first meeting in January, by resolution, all of the regular meetings of the board were adopted. So we actually need a formal resolution to change the regular meeting, not the meeting on the 14th. That can be done by a simple motion to change that to the 15th. But to change the meeting from the 21st to the 22nd, before you at the dais now, you have a proposed resolution. And then if it's the will of the board to amend the agenda, you can consider that at any point in the agenda.
Mr. Chair, could I make a suggestion? Do we want to just have Ms. Lackey handle this resolution during her county attorney's report to smoothline things?
Cam? Yeah. Ms. Lackey, if you would take care of that, would be great. Thank you.
Happy to.
Anything else, Ms. Miller? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I will open the floor up now for public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. If you do wish to come up to speak, please state your name and address before starting, and you will have 3 minutes. So anyone would like to come up for public comment? Okay.
Can I move that back a little? My name is Ursula M. Robinson. I reside at 16197 Stony Knoll Road, King George, Virginia, 22485. Good evening, King George, supervisors, and administrator. I am one of the board of directors for the Ralph Bunche Art and Humanity Organization Center. As a board member on the Ralph Bunche Art and Humanity Center, I'm here to state that the organization is legitimate. It has a 503c foundation status. The Ralph Bunche Art and Humanity Center has a governing board of directors that consists of 5 volunteer members and is a global partnership. The board of directors are Dora Johnson, Melanie Ouch, Ursula M. Robinson, Marsha Stonehill, Jalicia Ward, and partnering with Lawana Chambers Lawson, CEO, Tacit and Growth Strategy. It is not the Marsha Stonehill Group being a solely governed by her. As a board member of the Ralph Bunche Art and Humanity Center, I find it disrespectful to continue calling the organization the Stonehill Group, or for the false accusation that's being made to the Stonehill about the organization, especially since the Ralph Bunche Art and Humanity Center is a legal entity and working for the respectable goal of preserving the King George County Historic Black School. People should be honest, positive, patient, and goal-oriented. We need to work towards together, achieve one common goal, preserve the Ralph Bunche High School, so others can see the great history in the building. The Ralph Bunche Art and Humanity Center organization is working to raise funds and awareness to revitalize and preserve the Ralph Bunche High School. We are committed to the group working to achieve one goal. We welcome the support and ideas for the restoration from the many Ralph Bunche alumni and Ms. Claudette Jordan. We are persistent and preserving to restore the Ralph Bunche High School for the museum and other public cases. Provide and restore Ralph Bunche High School to allow the history of the King George Blacks Public School to be told in a centralized location. Bring King George County together as a community, showing love and unity to move forward in a joint effort to preserve the Ralph Bunche High School. I ask that we all work together for the good of the Ralph Bunche High School building to make it better and to be seen as a functioning building on one of the main highways in King George County. I ask the Board of Supervisors to let us keep moving forward to get the building preserved and not keep procrastinating and listening to the comments hindering the movement forward. Oh.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Anybody else for public comment tonight?
Hello, everyone in the evening.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you for having me, and thank you again for letting us all have public comment here. It's very, very special and very, very thankful for that opportunity. I'm Melanie Ox over at 229 River here in King George. Thank you so much again for having us. And just to reiterate, yes, I am part of the Ralph Bunche Arts and Humanities Center Board. I serve as treasurer. I find that to be an important role. Not treasurer, excuse me, secretary. I find that to be a very important role because one of the things that I love about this community is the history that it has with it. And I want to make sure that something happens with such a historic building so that way my children can learn from it, right? And that our children can learn from it. And I think that's something I'm very grateful that the Board of Supervisors is working towards right now. So I appreciate what you're trying to do in that endeavor. But just as a reminder to you all, one of the things that just is deep in my heart to just relate is that the support that we're actually getting from for the Ralph Bunche Arts and Humanities Center is actually coming from not only just us here at the board, but many other parties are actually involved. And they're coming from all different walks of life. We have attorneys that are helping us, CPAs that are helping us, and other folks that are helping us as well to make sure that we're having some sort of sustainable, viable solution, excuse me. And then the last thing is that we're still receiving support from alumni themselves as well, from the many interviews and the many conversations that we've had throughout those in the community. And that's been motivating us to keep on moving forward and making sure that we're doing something beautiful for all of us here, and something which will both, our goal is to make sure benefit those that have attended the school as well as those for my children to learn from. So that's my motivation. I just wanted to share that with you. And thank you again, everyone, for taking the time today.
Thank you, Ms. Ox.
Okay. Good evening, board members. My address is St. Paul's Road, King George, Virginia, 22485. And my name is Jalecia Ward. I am an advocate, activist, former state candidate for District 99, but I stand before all of you today because I am a proud board member of the Ralph Bunche Art and Humanities Center. I stand before you here today because the Ralph Bunche Art and Humanities Center has become an absolute dream to many in our communities, but our board, RBHC, has become our life mission and our daily goals. The work that we conduct on a regular basis has been absolutely life-changing. We have collaborated with local businesses and organizations that have become the foundations of this county. We have built a structure to uplift, motivate, and empower the people, and we have hosted panels and created safe havens for Ralph Bunche alumni to share their stories. These stories of what has been testified has become the reason why I will continue this mission regardless of any obstacles that come in our way. These testimonies only confirm the true roots of racial violence and systemic racism that exists deep within this county, and we are and will continue doing the work to help heal and move us all forward. 3 minutes is not enough to share with all of you what alumni of Ralph Bunche has shared with me, but I will speak on this one statement shared by an alumni that has haunted me until this very day. And his biggest concern and question for RBHC was, what if we do all this work to transition our high school into an art and humanities center and they just burn it down? It took me a while to respond to what he had just asked because his questions and concerns truly upset me and hurt me to the core. Who is they? Who are you referring to? Even though I know, we know, and all of you know who and what he meant by that word they. The concept of what he experienced and still is experiencing in this county is hurtful. That word they is the generational trauma caused from systemic racism and white supremacy. What are we all doing and what have all of you done to help our communities heal from this? RBHC, on the other hand, has just created a billboard that says, "Save African American history in King George," because these stories must be preserved so history does not repeat itself. We can break this cycle. You asked for my address before we speak, right? Underneath that address I shared with all of you right now is 3 acres of land owned by African Americans in this county before it was taken from them. You know who shared that with me? An alumni of the Ralph Bunche High School shared that with me. Whose land is under your address? Go home, find out, start there. Be open to learning your true history as RBHC continues to fight and preserve theirs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ward. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Dines. Oh,
Good evening. Claudette Jordan, I am. Claudette Jordan, referred to earlier. And Mr. Stonehill always recognizes me from Maryland, but I dare to say that I'm the only person in this room who was born in Dahlgren and raised in Dahlgren. I went wide and far for career and so forth, but I'm here and I'll always come. This is my hometown. I stand by what I've said regarding the Stonehill Group. I stand by what I've said about the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association and who we are and the stories that have been told. The website, rbaa1949.org, it's there. The oral histories are there. The exhibit is down at the University of Mary Washington that tells the story. That same video is in the schools, in all the libraries that tell the stories. The stories have been told, okay? And this would just be my bottom line. We can be imitated, the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association, we can be imitated by name and colors and all of that, but we cannot be duplicated. And I just want to make that known. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Dines, anyone online? Okay, anybody have any correspondence that need to be read in? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and open now up to reports of members of the board. Bender?
I want to thank everyone who came out and spoke today, the members of the Ralph Bunche Arts and Humanities Center and Ms. Jordan. I'll proceed on with my board report. I want to thank Mike Muncie and his staff. I meant to thank them last time, but I didn't quite have a voice to thank everybody I needed to thank. I wanted to thank them for helping to solve the problem at Sealston Park's parking lot. I really appreciate what they did for the citizens, fixing it so nobody had any tripping hazards up there. And I also want to thank them for the work they're doing on updating the grounds around the parking lot as we get it prepared for paving. And I wanted to acknowledge them because I gave a shout out to Mr. Clark and his staff, and Mr. Muncie and his staff had a lot of work to do on it. So I just want to acknowledge them in a meeting. Thank you. On May 23rd, I attended the GWRC meeting with Ms. Kupka, and some highlights is there's a push from the federal government and Vdot in Northern Virginia to have less asphalt and more development around transit and to help with congestion issues. GWRC also brought forward their strategic plan with 5 points: developing the economy, preserving the environment, building community health, facilitating transportation solutions, enhancing organizations and responsiveness and effectiveness. On June 1st, I hosted the Executive Director, Chip Boyles, and the Deputy Director, Kate Gibson, of a tour of King George. And the important reason why I gave them a personal tour was to familiarize them with every stuff that's not on the Route 3 and 301 corridor. And it's very important that our leaders of the Planning Commission understand our unique characteristics of our county and the challenges that we will have with the bridge. And one of the places I took them to was Barnesfield and our issue with access to that park now once that bridge comes in. So they might be able to facilitate with rural grants to help us find a solution for better access to that park. On June 2nd, I had the privilege to tour with Ms. Lisa Hull from the Northern Neck Tourism Commission, going down the Northern Neck, visiting historic sites and museums. And one aspect that was important was how to modernize our museums and get younger folks interested and engaged. It was a very long tour. I went all the way down to Kilmarnock, but it was very fascinating to listen about from experts on how they're bringing their sites and museums to make it more into the 21st century. And then I had the pleasure to address the 6th grade class at King George Middle School. I thank Ms. Moyers and several other teachers, and unfortunately I forgot their names right now. They let me come in and speak. They had a part of their lesson plan on the Holocaust, and after the SOLs were finished, they invited me to come in. I have toured a concentration camp, Dachau, and I shared with them the stories of touring it, and I talked to all the classes all day. It was really fun to listen to their questions and really speak to the classmates about, you know, what happens when you to demonize one segment of the population. And I talked about social media and how we forget about, you know, online, we don't see faces and we become keyboard warriors, and to be a little more kind and think about how you act online. And it was very it was a cool time and some really inspiring. Can they hacks? A lot of questions I wouldn't have thought about, and some of them I had to say next time I come back, I'll have more answers. But it was a great time and an all-day affair. And then the last thing I would like to bring up, and I brought this up in our Service Authority meeting. I was asked by the director of DEQ to participate in another working group and explain it. I do not have information at the moment. They just asked myself, supervisor from Caroline, from the city of Danville and Frederick County, besides other stakeholders. It's pursuant to Acts of Assembly, Charter 688, HB 206. The Department of Environmental Quality will convene an ad hoc work group of stakeholders to assist in drafting amendments to the small renewable energy permit by rule regulations to address impacts on prime agricultural soils and forest lands within the program. This group will support DEQ in identifying how prime agricultural soils and forest lands should be addressed and to identify potential mitigation strategies. And we anticipate the group will meet 4 to 5 times throughout the summer. I already spoke to Ms. Hall to get some feedback from her, and if I cannot make the group, be my stand-in, and I already talked to Mr. Miller about it, and he was okay with that. But I think it'll be really positive that we have impact on, solar farms. They're looking at counties with large tracts of lands left, and there are concerns with runoff and how it will affect our nutrients into the Rappahannock River. So I'll be happy to serve on that and bring back information. And that is on the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spender. Mr. Granger.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everyone, thank you for coming out and speaking. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on the topic, but I did hear, at least I thought I heard, it sounds like, my understanding is the RBAHC's visions to build an Arts and Humanities Center out of the Ralph Bunche School. And there was a letter of intent originally with the county at one point with an expectation to meet certain requirements and work towards a memorandum of understanding with the county in order to raise funds and then to build out that building. And the expectations that certain these wickets would be met, they were not. And so that letter of intent has dissolved. And there is no relationship currently between the county and the RBAHC. And obviously the RBAHC is welcome to continue their efforts as a private organization as they want. But right now there is no formal or even informal association between the county and the RBAHC in order to move forward with an Arts and Humanities Center. So the county is still looking at what needs to be done and working towards building and rehabilitating the Ralph Bunche building. And as we see tonight, we'll have a presentation from Wiley Wilson about it. And as always, we always continue to work with the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association and appreciate that relationship we have with them. Other than that, just say that I did attend our budget work sessions. Again, thank you to staff for all their hard work and everyone's patience as we continue to work towards our budget, as we'd been waiting for the state government to finish up the budget process so that we could have more firm numbers. I know people have been waiting. So hopefully we'll have all that information finished and finalized here soon so tax bills can go out. And my last thing I'd like to do is I'd like to make a motion to forward to the courts a recommendation of Robert Vdot to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Ms. Kupka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Wednesday, May 18th, Supervisor Collins, Sheriff Giles, and I met with representatives of Fairview Beach Residents Association regarding updates to the golf cart ordinance. I want to thank County Attorney Kelly Lackey for revising the ordinance for us so we can bring it back to the board to schedule a public hearing. On Thursday, May 19th, I attended the graduation ceremony for King George High School's class of 2022 at Virginia Credit Union Stadium. Congratulations to all of the graduates. Monday, May 23rd, as Ms. Bender previously indicated, I attended the GWRC meeting. She did a thorough report on that, so I won't elaborate. Thank you, Ms. Bender. Wednesday, June 1st, I attended the GWRC Affordable Housing Grant Committee meeting. We scored the applications we received and will be making a recommendation for award to the commission at our next meeting. I have a couple of motions. I move to appoint Mr. Ross Bonamy to the remainder of the unexpired term that will expire in June 2023 to the Smoot Library Board of Trustees.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I move to reappoint Mr. David Garvin to the Rappahannock Area EMS Council for a new 3-year term, which will expire in 2025 upon expiration of his term that expires at the end of the month.
Second.
Motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And lastly, I wanted to thank everyone who came out and gave public comment tonight. I want to thank all of you who spoke on behalf of the Ralph Bunche Arts and Humanities Center, members of your board of directors. I appreciate the effort that you have put into that endeavor to date. However, as Mr. Granger indicated, you all were notified in March of 2021 that you had not met benchmarks under the terms of the letter of intent, that fundraising benchmarks were not met at that time, and that an option agreement was not executed in due time as indicated in the letter of intent. So I would reiterate what Mr. Granger said. As of right now, there is no formal relationship with the Ralph Bunche Arts and Humanities Center. My understanding is, from what you all said tonight, you have one common goal: to raise funds to preserve Ralph Bunche High School. However, when I look at your website and I click on donate, it says there are 2 options to select when donating to RBAHC: general fund donations and donations specific to the development of our exciting new documentary. So between seeing that and, quite frankly, some of the things that I read in a newspaper article last month, in which you all participated in a Zoom call with a reporter, I am not sure that your organization is moving in the same direction that the county originally intended based on the letter of intent as was executed back in 2019 prior to my term on this board. With that, I will leave it at that, and I look forward to the conversation about Ralph Bunche High School later this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Governor. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening. Thank you for coming forth and let your voices be heard. I think they've already, the other supervisors have hit pretty heavy on the organizations that represented themselves this evening. In King George County, there is no doubt that racism occurred and racial violence. I'm using that quote from Ms. Ward. If it bothered me that Ms. Ward said that it still is occurring. So if it is still occurring, which I am not privy to that, but if it is, it needs to be reported, Ms. Ward, to the authorities, if not the authorities of King George County, the authorities of the United States of America, because we're past that in this county. And if there's something that I don't know about, it needs to be investigated. So I have a contact information in email or any other way. You don't have to contact me. You can contact any member or any state or federal organization, because it's not going to happen in King George. And if you say it is, then we need to see it and stop it. Okay? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Collins. I want to thank everyone for coming out and giving their public comment. Certainly appreciate that. It makes the meetings worthwhile when the people can come out and actually speak. So I certainly appreciate everybody that comes. Tuesday, 24th, I also attended a work session with the board here to finally get our budget adopted, hopefully, and take care of all that. And thanks again for staff and everything. Mrs. Hahn, thank you very much for all your number crunching. Certainly appreciate all that. And I've also worked this last week or so a little bit, had a number of complaints on a new trash company that's here that took over county waste. Folks are not being able to get a hold of the trash company. And I even myself, I called 5 days in a row and was put on a forever hold trying to get some information for some folks. Also called a local rep. I guess our landfill is also having a hard time getting a hold of any type of reps from the company. But so if anybody's is having trouble, so the company that took over County Waste, I don't know if whoever, a GFL, I think is the name of the company, but I've had numerous emails and voicemails. Even for me, everything's been unanswered. So if anyone is having problems, I'm sorry, and just keep plugging away. Hopefully they'll get their act straight. And I would also then like to appoint finally for the Smoot Library Board of Trustees, I would like to appoint Sheila Cocky from the Dahlgren area. She was a high school teacher and also was on the worked at the Smoot Library as an assistant for 10 years. And I will also send you all a copy of her bio.
Second.
We have motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. And that is all I have. Thank you. Oops, moving on with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. And jumping on to constitutional officers, do we have any? I see none. Mrs. Lackey, report of the county attorney.
I do have a few items. The first is 2 deeds of dedication on behalf of Oakwood Estates, Section 4. Those were included in the agenda package, and I stand by for any questions on those. And if there's consensus, then those dedications would be accepted on behalf of the county.
So moved.
Second.
Motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
The second appointment is the second issue is the Vdot secondary 6-year plan and construction priority list resolution. There was a presentation at the previous meeting by David Beal on behalf of Vdot, and so this would be to formally accept the secondary system 6-year plan as presented, and also the construction priorities as presented at the last meeting. It was brought to my attention there is a typo in the third whereas clause. It should say fiscal year 2023, fiscal year 2028, not 27. But otherwise, the resolution in the agenda is intended to be in support of what was presented at the previous meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adopt the resolution with the amendment from Ms. Lackey.
Second.
Motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
And then the third matter I have, it's not part of the agenda. It was the matter that was brought up at the beginning of the meeting with the possible need for amendments to the agenda. We've encountered a problem in that the newspaper was unable to publish the notice of public hearing for the budget hearing that was intended on the 14th. Staff is proposing that meeting be moved to the 15th. That would allow that to be placed for advertisement. And in addition to that, the meeting on the 21st, There's an issue in that due to new laws concerning absentee voting, this boardroom is not available on the 21st. We also need a full 7 days between the hearing and consideration of the budget. So before you on the dais is a resolution. The title says to change the location, but in light of the need to actually change the date, I would propose that that resolution be to change the date of the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Supervisors, which was scheduled for June 21st at 6:30 here, and that be rescheduled to June 22nd at 6:30 also here in the boardroom.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adopt the resolution to change the date of scheduled June 21, 2022 meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors.
Second.
And lastly, I'm sorry.
We have motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
I think this needs a roll call vote, correct? Because it's down the bottom or not?
It's a resolution, not an ordinance, so we can't.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it's based on the,
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
And to address the date for the special meeting for the budget hearing, that can be part of the motion to adjourn, so that doesn't necessarily need to be addressed now. It was brought to my attention that Chair Stonehill did not express his vote on the last appointment to the library board. So if we could just go ahead and clarify, or to the chair's vote yea or nay on that appointment.
Thank you for answering that question. But yes, the chair voted or votes aye on both appointments. So motion passes.
That's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Lackey.
So the June 15th meeting will still be 6 p.m.
Yes, sir.
at the sheriff's office?
I believe it is available here.
Okay.
You're welcome to go back to the sheriff's office. I'm sure he'd love to have you, but this room is available.
Just want to make sure when it comes time, we're prepared. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lackey, for all that. We don't have any public hearings, so next up will be presentation reports. Ralph Bunch School from Wiley Wilson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is the presentation?
Let me do a quick intro. This is Ryan Bogies with Wiley Wilson. And if you remember, the part of our CIP included the assessment of the old middle school, current courthouse, and the Ralph Bunch building. And so this is the first part of all those projects, and it is Wiley Wilson that is providing the analysis for us. This is Ryan Bogies, correct?
Ryan Bivens.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Mia Gilliam with Wiley Wilson.
And Travis Cusenberry is our the project manager on all this. So, but we're very excited to give you this information.
Okay, thank you. Well, we understand the importance of this project to the county and the community, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I'd like to just give a brief overview of our agenda, give a little background about the services we performed in the past on this project, some of the site observations we observed during our recent site visit, and then go through the update for the opinion and probable construction cost. So back in 2010, Wiley Wilson did a assessment for the full Ralph Bunch School, the main building, the addition, and the maintenance building. This assessment also explored potential reuse for the facility, and we developed opinion probable construction costs for repairs, renovations for the school. Recently this year, the county requested for us to revisit that study and look at updating the opinion of probable construction cost that was done in 2010. And as part of that too, we got on site just to get our structural and architectural team on site to see if there had been any major significant changes regarding the structure of the building. So back in April, we performed a site visit. We did a walkthrough of the building. We were able to access pretty much all the interior spaces for the main building and also the basement of the addition. Some of the buildings on the main floor of the addition were not accessible. The doors were locked. And then we also were able to access the maintenance building. And we did a full walk of the perimeter to check the exterior structure and the site itself. Some of the observations made during our site visits, fair amount of water infiltration is coming into the building due to the roof and also coming in from the exterior. There's a picture here in the top left. This is from the basement of the addition. As you can see, there's evidence of standing water that's accumulated in the basement. The picture here in the top right is on the front side of the addition of the building. This was an old gutter system that directed water away from the building. Over time, looks like this is eroded and fallen in just due to the stormwater. And in fact, it's probably directing some stormwater back to the building that is infiltrating into the foundation. Of course, we also observed the potential for hazardous materials inside the building just due to the age and the construction at the time, the type of tile that was used, the glue for the ceilings, insulation for piping materials is probably likely that it contains asbestos or lead materials. We also noticed that the exterior and eaves for the overhangs of the building are in poor condition or rotting. They probably need repair or full replacement, as well as the ceiling plaster inside the gym. It has significant water damage. Oh. Can you hear me okay? No, we can't hear you. Oh, sorry. Our structural evaluation of going through the building, most of the structural cracks are still kind of original, what they were in 2010. One of the storage rooms inside the building looked like the cracks had gotten worse, but inside the gym itself, it doesn't seem to be much difference than the original 2010 assessment. We did notice in our exterior walk of the building, a lot of exterior cracks, spalling mortar around joints, windows, lintels, specifically on the addition. Typically what happens here is water gets into the building and the steel lintels. The steel, as it corrodes, it will expand and push brick out. So we noticed a lot of those places on the addition. Some of the kind of next step immediate recommendations we're looking at recommend to the county is officially doing a hazardous materials assessment to determine the extent and the potential abatement of the actual asbestos and lead materials that are within the building. Also getting a mold assessment done, in particularly for the addition, just due to the presence of water that's getting into the facility, and also mitigating the water intrusion into the building. In looking at the opinion of probable construction costs, we used the 2010 assessment of it as the basis, and then we added in those additional items that were observed during our site visit, such as some of the site conditions, the mold abatement, and those other items. And we updated the original costs based on several different tools. One of these being a escalation factor. The engineer news record has a construction cost building index that tracks construction costs over every month, every year. So it's an escalation factor that was used for part of it. If we had recent construction bid information, we use that for some of the site items, utilities, for the improvements for the facility. And then, of course, using a software program using RS means CostWorks. It's a software program used in the industry for consultants and construction firms for estimating costs. In looking at the total opinion of probable construction costs, we broke it down into several main areas. One being the main building and the original school and the addition. And then we added in the additional items that were observed during our site visits. And we had an allowance in there for furnishings and audiovisual equipment if the school was renovated. And broke out the maintenance building separately as a line item for that facility, for the roof and the other improvements, structural improvements there. And then the site improvements were broken out separately for utilities, the entrance, parking lot, and site lighting. And then factoring in a typical 20% cost for contractor overhead mobilization brings us to a base construction subtotal of around $5 million. Just doing that, this is a study and assessment phase, and also just due to the present market conditions with bidding environment and material costs, we figured it was appropriate to put a 30% contingency on that construction cost to bring an estimate of roughly $6.5 million. And typically for a building project, anywhere in the range of 15% for design and construction administration fees adds about roughly another $980,000. So our total estimate for the project cost is roughly $7.5 million. That's the extent of our presentation. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you, sir. Board, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bogese, did I say that correctly?
Bogies, ma'am.
Bogese.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Thank you, sir. So I'm looking at not your capsule budget, but the full report that was shared with all of us. And in there, I'm seeing, because I liked your slide that had the 3 areas of next focus. I'm seeing hazmat abatement for $100,000, mold abatement for $50,000, and replace the foundation for $75,000.
Those were allowances.
Allowances. But you're also recommending a study, assessment, further targeted assessment for hazmat and mold, the asbestos and the mold, right?
Yes, that's correct. There's professional firms that actually have that expertise to go in and look at what materials are there. We know a little bit just based on our experience on projects, but we would recommend that a full assessment is done to actually determine what material is there and what the abatement is. That was a allowance that we kind of came up based on our observations of the site, but it could be less, it could be a little bit more.
Sure. So when I add up those 3, I get $225,000. So would you think that if we had, say, another $500,000 to throw at the building, it could perhaps address those next major issues which you have targeted for us?
I believe so. It's my understanding that the county is funding a roof replacement project.
I'm not talking about that grant. I'm talking about the next grant we're going to write for. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. I believe so.
So I would move to direct staff to work cooperatively between economic development and tourism and county engineering to work up a budget for another $500,000 grant request for phase 2 to the National Park Service African American Preservation Fund grant program. It opens again in the fall.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Thank you, sir. I think that's all I had for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I do have a question. And that was the impetus of this, going back to 2019, making sure we addressed all of our buildings that we've left for a little while to make sure. So the structure is pretty sound, you would say, you know, for a building that's been left to its own devices for a little while?
Parts of it, based on our assessment, the main school, and probably some of the more concerned areas are those exterior spalling cracks that we saw on the addition piece.
Okay, and then when you talked about the site construction, that also is talking about redoing possibly a well there and the Vdot improvements that would have to be made?
Correct.
Okay.
That would be for, yeah, to turn it into, I guess, depend on the potential reuse and Vdot requirements for access and entrance to the facility. That was kind of all in the original assessment that we did. And that's what our cost update estimates are based on.
And then with the VDOT assessment, does that have any allowance for what kind of use it was? Like the amount of people that visit?
It would probably depend on the amount of traffic cars per day regarding turn lane requirements. And I don't have those figures in front of me right now, but that's depending on the traffic load, it would determine the requirements, sighting distance typically for insurance requirements to a facility like that.
Well, I asked that because I've mentioned this to VDOT for the last couple of years. My concern is the Eden Drive is almost across from it, and there's 2 housing developments, so there would have to be some improvements in that intersection to have both.
Right. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a follow-up based on that question of Ms. Benders? Thank you. So that, what was it, $330,000 ballpark that you all came up with? That would just be county costs. That doesn't include any VDOT grants, like the Economic Development Access Program or revenue sharing, which is a 50-50 split.
That's correct. We didn't take any of that.
You didn't take any of that into account. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, sir, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could we have some additional discussion about not involving the engineer, but involving the school itself?
Sure.
Thank you. So it's been brought to my attention that we could possibly apply for Industrial Revitalization Fund grants from DHCD. They had a big infusion of funding from ARPA. But in order to be more competitive, we would want to determine if we could adopt by ordinance a revitalization zone for the area, or at least the parcel. And the one easy one without knowing the full, and I'll get to this in a minute, the full future use of the building is a school revitalization zone. So I would ask consensus of the board to direct staff to contact DHCD to find out how that process works to create a special zone for the building and which one would be the most advantageous to us in order to apply for revitalization funding.
Mr. Chair, can I follow Ms. Kupka on that? I spoke on my tour specifically about this revitalization fund, and they've used it in Warsaw, and it's very successful to help revitalize their downtown.
Good. Ms. Collins? Okay.
Thank you. And then one last item. So Ralph Bunche High School last month garnered a mention in the Virginia Department of Historic Resources Comprehensive Historic Preservation Plan 2022 to 2027 on page 72 regarding our National Park Service grant award to replace the roof, which was previously alluded to. I believe the time is now to refocus our efforts on restoring the building. Years ago, I reviewed every board packet and minutes from 2014 to the present. I was pretty familiar from 2017 on because I was on staff and then I've been a supervisor. But years ago, the county had a business plan and even a conceptual design, which Wiley Wilson did for the county in 2017. And a prior board tasked the Ralph Bunche Advisory Committee to execute a business plan and conduct a capital campaign to raise funds to restore the building. At some point in 2017, the direction given to administration changed to sell the county's dilapidated buildings. Since then, the county has engaged with 2 private parties in efforts to do so, and still the building remains in its sorry state. We have a new roof coming and new ambition to address the building. And I believe we have the leadership and political will on this board to do so. So I would move to reappoint a Ralph Bunche Advisory Committee to finish out the business plan for the building and conduct a capital campaign to raise the funding needed to bring the building back to occupancy and useful purpose. Supervisor Binder and I worked the phones all last week to come up with a group we think capable of working together to accomplish these tasks. And that list was forwarded to all of you by the county administrator on my behalf. I'm sorry, I moved.
Second.
So we have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion?
Did you want to read off the members for the sake of?
I can do that. Annie Kupka, Kathy Binder, Nick Miner, Chris Clark, Claudette Jordan, Phyllis Cook, Dr. Kathy Cutright, Terry Rinko, Renee Parker, Dr. Christina Turdian, Michael Hubbard, Lisa Hall, Stephanie Birch, Shannon Tolliver, Tamika Hayward, LaWanda Peggy Wright.
And who came up with this list? Did you and Mrs.
Ms. Binder and I did.
Mrs. Bender come up with this list? I had sent you all an email as well. I'm concerned about having a supervisors on this board. And I know we've had supervisors on other kind of boards like that. And I'm just wondering how, one is a lot of times these boards look at the supervisors and say, they're supervisors, they're kind of in charge. And I kind of look back at the service authority as well. And I think that, my opinion is that we shouldn't have supervisors on the service authority. If they're going to be separate, they're separate. And my concern is that if this board or this group comes back to the supervisors and need motions or money and things like that, or anything, is there going to be an issue having supervisors there making opinions there and then coming back here? So it's not really separate. And I would like to look into some of these folks. I know some of these folks, and I would like to do a little bit more research on who all these other folks are. So,
Mr. Chairman, I respond.
yes.
I don't have an email from you with your concerns. I don't know if any of my colleagues do, but I don't have any email from you with my concerns or your concerns, I'm sorry. And I did when I sent out the list. I also sent you the list from back in 2014 as historical precedents of the Ralph Bunche Advisory Committee. It was the second attachment, which had Ms. Brabo and Mr. Howard as supervisors on the committee. So there is precedence to have leadership from the board on this committee.
Great. Yeah, I did see that.
And let me just say this. Mr. Stonehill did send me an email, and that is my fault. I did not interpret that you wanted me to send it to him. That's my fault. So I'm going to send this right now to all the board members right now, and that's on me. But Mr. Stonehill did talk with me about his concerns, and he did send an email this afternoon. So I will forward that to you all. That's my fault.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Collins.
So I received the list of folks, and though I don't agree with all the folks on the list, it wouldn't stop me from voting for all the folks on the list. I think that it would probably be in the best interest to move forward with this. This has been just sitting there doing nothing except deteriorating ever since I can remember, and I can remember a long time ago. This is in front of us, but we also have other buildings that are just falling apart as we sit here too. But in the meantime, I think we should go ahead and get a consensus, or it's a motion. Go ahead and vote on this, and I would agree with that list.
Would you like me to read your memo, your email to me?
That's all right. Everybody,
And I apologize again to the
it just
board.
came through for everybody.
Okay.
So, okay. I mean, those are my concerns. I mean, that's just one person. And, you know, if we were all going to have a lot of these other committees, we've all had people that all of us have appointed or made recommendations. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents. I mean, I think if we're going to do a board, and yes, I agree with Mr. Collins, this has been something that's been going on for a very long time with you know, not a whole lot of action happening. And we certainly need to do something about that. I would just think that if we're going to do this committee, it needs to be, you know, more representation of all of us, you know, either putting things in or putting certain people in or doing research on this. So that's just my opinion.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify a couple things. You mentioned the Service Authority. The Board of Supervisors on that goes back to the original charter in 1992. And a lot of people might know way back, I think it was 2008, 2009, there was a meeting between the school board and the Board of Supervisors that I actually filmed because Sidell asked me to film it. And they are in the part of that meeting, they talked about it was important for members of the school board and the Board of Supervisors to help to make choices and decisions about the forward nature of that building with the Alumni Association. So I think this furthers even going way back then. And that was a very well-attended meeting that packed the firehouse, and I got bad video shots because it was so packed I couldn't film from there. So there is a long feeling that as representative of the community that we work together to make, and if you look at the list, there's a really good representative of community members on there, people from all different walks of life and roles in the community.
Thank you.
What would be the length of term of service and before re-upping? Would we do it every year? Would there, like with the Tourism Advisory Committee, we kind of do all of them at one time, so.
I wouldn't have a problem with renewing on a yearly basis.
Okay. So would we want to do it starting now, or would we want to say when we do our yearly, the January organizational meeting, which would only be 6 months now, but.
I think we have people ready to rock and roll on this building.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant for the, like, term of service for this one, go till January, or do we just want to push it out to the June 7th?
Do
June 7th, okay.
by a year.
Okay.
And that's how we do tourism.
It is. I'm just asking. So then could we have just a friendly amendment to clarify then that it would be for 1 year with the need to reappoint at that point?
I have no problem with that.
Mr. Miller, you had something?
I was just going to suggest that I don't believe you want to put your staff in a position of having a vote. I think that they ought to be ex officio or advisory in nature. I do not believe that that is a fair position to put staff in. And I think that this is clearly a community function, and our staff is there to serve and represent, but not to be in a position of rendering a vote or a decision other than advisory.
Okay. Anything else? All right. We have a motion properly seconded and changed, amended. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Collins, I didn't hear you.
Said aye.
Okay. And Chair will vote nay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Next up will be Sheets to Sheets Action Report. Mr. Chalky.
I'm not entirely, thank you for having me back, by the way. I'm not entirely sure we have my slides based on a misunderstanding between me and Mr. Minor. They made your agenda packet, but we might not have them for the presentation here. So, Mr. Chairman, I can do one of two things. I can talk as best I can to the slides on my phone, and if you have them in front of you, or we can reschedule, unless there's somebody from Mr. Minor's office that could find them quickly.
Can you email them to Mr. Dines or?
It's far too large. I had to use WeTransfer, and he downloaded them. I just don't know where.
Okay.
Can you take it from our board report? I think that's what they're working on.
I know you had a great turnout. It's too bad the weather was not the best in the world this time.
Very challenging, yes. Well, that's loading. I believe they're going to pull it up from the agenda packet. So thank you for having me back. I was last here in October as part of the TAC grant application process. And at that time, I outlined a vision to make the Sheets to Sheets Trail Run one of the largest events in the county, really. Something that draws hundreds of people, not only from the Fredericksburg area, but from surrounding states as well. So you have to tilt your head to see this, but at the time, I also discussed kind of the vision of this race and making Dahlgren specifically, its restaurants, its hotels, its businesses, the central hub of the event. I talked about the amenities, the features that you would expect in a professional or a regional race. And with your help and with the help of Mr. Miner's office, Economic Development Office, I think we've made a lot of progress. So I wanted to come here tonight and do two things. Give you a quick update of this year's event, but do so in the context of this larger vision that we've actually been talking about for several years now. So next. So just a quick overview if you're not familiar with the Sheets to Sheets Trail Run. It starts at the Sheets across from King George Middle School. There's a 1.5 mile road section along Route 3 and Comorn. And then you pick up the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail for the last 12.5 miles. You go all the way to the Dahlgren Sheets. Along the way, there are a bunch of fun aid stations. I serve pie at mile 3.14. Runners stop at the campsite and make s'mores and hang out in the hammock. It's a very untraditional race. It's meant to be fun. And we also have the county, the school board provides, or the transportation department provides shuttle buses. That's been very popular for the last 3 years, I believe. So we park people in Dahlgren. That's the central hub, the shopping center there. We drive them to the start line, and they basically run back to their car in the restaurants and so forth in Dahlgren. Next. So my mission as race director, 4 points. One is to bring people of all abilities to the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail. It's a gem we have in this community. So whether you're a competitive runner, whether you walk half of the course, or whether you're one of the wheelchair athletes that we have out, everybody should be able to enjoy the trail. Secondly, encourage a fun break from these competitive races. I personally run a half dozen or so, typical races a year, and I can tell you they're very stressful. You worry more about your pace and your time and your standings and so forth. So there's enough of those. I wanted to have something that's different, that encourages people, like-minded people. Just come out, exercise with like-minded people, and enjoy nature. Next, I've been able to give back to the community. I have more details on that coming up. And then the last part is to promote King George, especially as a trail running destination. I want people to do what I do for my favorite races, which is, circle on the calendar every year, look forward to it, running it with their friends. Next. So in my office, we'll always start with the bottom line up front. So a very memorable race. I think that's an accurate statement. The weather was absolutely the worst it could possibly have been. You might remember that morning, March 12th, I believe it was. We had everything from torrential rains to, by the end, it was snowing like crazy, and 40-mile-per-hour winds. So very, very bad and challenging conditions. The front, we were trying to sneak it in because the worst of it wasn't supposed to get to us until the afternoon. But it came early. In fact, it came about an hour before the race started. Despite that, we had about 180 out of 300 registered runners show up and finish the race. Trail runners are a pretty hardy lot. A lot of them, they enjoyed it. They just embraced the conditions and the stories they would have and the great pictures. I want to thank all the volunteers. We had some quick action to salvage the event and the equipment. Like I said, that front came through and we literally had to scramble and tear down everything in about 3 minutes. That took us 2 days to build, just so it wouldn't be torn to shreds. But despite all that, great participation, great feedback on the survey. People just had a good time. And let's not forget, it's all for charity. It was a record charity donation this year. Next slide. So I'll run through the numbers real quick. The bottom chart shows the growth of the race over the years. So I think, 300 is what we had this year. It's what it was capped at. I think that's about right from this point forward. That's about the capacity of either sheet store. It's about the capacity of the road in between. So I think that's about right. It also, a lot of the survey talks about, or responses talk about the community feel of the event. Not making it too big. So I think that's about the right size. Like I said, a lot of no-shows, obviously, because of the weather. In a typical year, the last 2 years, it's averaged about 8.5%. This year was off the charts at 40%. What didn't change over on the right is the demographics. It's still primarily female, 71%, and an older running group. Not intentional, it's just the way it's turned out. Next. And this is where people come from. So they came from, of course, the immediate area, but we had people as far away as Cincinnati, Erie, Pennsylvania. We had New York City. We had Wilmington, North Carolina. In total, 7 states in the district represented. And if you zoom in on the right, you see that pretty healthy representation from Northern Virginia in the DC area. Of course, Fredericksburg is always well represented. That's where it started. And I'm quite pleased with the bottom right there is the participants from the Richmond area. So that was a new outreach this year. I worked with the Lucky Road Run Shop. They have a shop in Fredericksburg, but they also have 2 shops in Richmond. And they allowed me to advertise in their stores, and it really turned out well. So we're starting to get a foothold from the down south as well. Next slide. And these are some of the, on the right, those are the sponsors, and on the left, the various organizations. I couldn't do this without all the public support, dozens and dozens of volunteers, and of course the Economic Development and Tourism Office, a great partnership with them as well. Next. All right, so it's a little hard to see, but this is one of the more important build slide, or was a build slide, because it shows the progression of the event. And it shows that vision that I talked about. So this is the quick history. It started in 2018, really is just a meetup on Facebook. So I asked them, came with the idea, why don't we just run from the sheets to the sheets? And we had, 24 people show up. And we had a good time. Sheets gave us free coffee. So we were on to something. The next year, I said, well, let's do that again, but let's make a purpose, give a purpose behind it. So I sought donations, and that supported Ainsley's Angels. Again, we saw the potential of it. So in 2020, that's the year it really became, a real thing, a real race, a real name, a logo, a website, all that sort of thing. That's when we partnered formally with Sheets, the dog run Sheets specifically, and they've been fantastic. And in return, the charity donation primarily goes to Sheets for the Kids. That was the first year we had the county school shuttle service. That was very important. Next, 2021, and it's growing this whole time. We were up to 227. This was at the height of COVID. We had lots of mitigations in place because of COVID. And we continued to build it into more of a regional event. In fact, we partnered with Arsenal Events. That was the first year of their King George Trail series, and so we were proud to be part of that and this year as well. And it's a little hard to see, but in that box and in the next one, you see the TAC in green. What I'm doing there is I'm showing you where, in the last 2 years, I've had a grant from the Tourism Advisory Committee, so I'm showing you where that investment went. So in 2021, it was towards the photo backdrop. and the structure for that. And I think I talked about that last year. So 2022, like I said, I was here in October. I went big. I had a lot of new ideas. I wanted to, I guess I'm impatient. I wanted to get to that point where it was really a professional race and you have all these amenities that you would expect in a larger event. So on the right there in the pink box, that's those are all the new initiatives that we implemented this year. And many of those are funded, as you can see, with the TAC icon with that grant. A lot of one-time purchases and so forth. Just a lot going on there. Everything from professional photographers and referral program, an ambassador program, a ton of custom fencing. We introduced a charity raffle just to gather more donations. We had bag drop and just on and on and on. Lots of stuff there. Now, in hindsight, that was way too much. That was you can ask my family. That about killed me implementing all that. But the good part is it's done, and I can reuse most of that going forward. So again, in the big picture, that's kind of where we are. I think we've realized 90%, let's say, of that vision. It's just kind of fine-tuning things from this point. Next slide. So as far as the local economic impact, I try wherever I can to shop local. Signworks is one of my sponsors, and I give them as much business as I can. Several thousands of dollars for this shirt and a bunch of postcards and signs and so forth. And you see a bunch of other local businesses I support. Next, or scroll down, please. So the lodging, it's very difficult, especially this year with a lot of last-second cancellations due to the weather, to get an accurate accounting of the hotel nights. My best estimate, based largely on survey results, is there were 25 to 40 hotel nights generated by this event. Next. So one part of my mission, as I said, is to give back. I've been proud to do that. This year we gave back almost $4,000 to a handful of charities you see there. The largest charity, of course, is Sheets for the Kids. They support this so much, especially Charlie there. He's the manager of the Dahlgren Sheets. Of course, I feel compelled to give back to Sheets for the Kids. If you're not familiar with that charity, they support up to 50 kids around the holidays right here in King George. Disadvantaged children with toys, with clothes, with that sort of thing. Also support, of course, the Dogwood Trail, Anthony's Angels, and Friends of Calvadon. Next. So when I was here talking about the grant application, I mentioned some of my goals were to set Dahlgren as the focal point and to have a finisher festival, encourage people to loiter. So the idea was bring people to the hotels, they stay overnight, they get on a King George school bus, they go to the start line in the morning, they run back to their car, they hang out at Sheets, they hang out at Five Guys, wherever, all those restaurants, maybe they go back to their hotel, that sort of thing, and just make a day of it. Make King George their destination. And I won't go through all those things, but some of those items are what your grant funded. Things from, a lot of signage, of course. And most of that is signage that was, you just create it one time. Almost all of that, in fact, is permanent signage. And I will note, the top right there, you had to look quick because that was only up for one day. We put that up the Friday before the race. And then in those frantic few minutes before the start, because the wind was really picking up and it was getting damaged, so we had to tear all that down. But so we didn't get to realize a lot of these things. And I believe the next slide goes into more detail. Right, so last second cancellations and adjustments. So on the left, you got some pictures from right before the race. It was worst conditions you can imagine. Even the porta-johns turned over. So on the right, those are all the things that we had to cancel or scale back at the last minute. So we had, 1126 Yoga Studio. We're going to come out and do the stretch zone at the start and the finish. We had an announcer that couldn't announce. We didn't have starting waves. If you were there, it was a little chaotic. We had looked like a clown car, honestly, with 180 people just streamed out of the sheets and down the road to the start. That was our start. So it wasn't what we planned, but we made the best of it, and we still pulled it off. Next. Every year I do a highlight, or I do a survey, and some of the highlights there, the numbers are, we had, of those finishers, about half of them responded, or about 30% of the registered runners. A lot of first timers. So you can see, again, of the responders, many of them were first timers. We've got a few people that have been there for all 5 years. On race day, I always ask, where are you coming from, to get a feel for, who's staying at hotel and so forth. So 41% were local, 46% drove, but they had to drive pretty good distance, over 30 miles, and 13% got a hotel in Dahlgren. And that's where I got the upper bound on that hotel estimate, if you extrapolate that to the full survey, the full cadre of runners. I also ask every year, what is your experience with the Dahlgren Rail Trail? And still a little surprised, 39% had never been on the trail before. So we brought all those people to the trail. And again, if we had 300 people and we had good weather and everything else, you could extrapolate that, and that would have meant that we would have introduced over 100 people to the trail that weekend. We had 26% who had seen some of the trail, and 34% who had been the whole 14 miles in our case. Next. A few more numbers. I ask on a scale of 1 to 5, what is the value of the race, trying to judge the cost and how it compares to others. I think we're quite competitive there. The middle one is, would you recommend it to friends and family? 93% said yes, 6% maybe. And overall satisfaction, again, 1 to 5, with 94% giving it a 4 or 5. So given those conditions and the horrible weather, I'll take that any day. So I thought that was pretty good. Next slide is, these are just some of the comments from the write-in section. Those are the most telling, I think, because people take the time. And there you can see themes. You can see a lot of comments about they really like the community. They really like the community vibe. Many great compliments on the volunteers who were out there for hours getting soaked. They like the shuttle buses, the bag drop, and so on. So lots of good feedback there. Next slide, I tried to kind of categorize some of those responses. So on the negative side, the post-race access to parking was a problem. It would have been iffy on a good day, honestly, but because of the construction of Bayside Ford, we did the best we could. We had a path that was up on a berm. But after the monsoon that morning, that all got flooded out, and it was a disaster, to be honest. So that was a bad part of it. Now next year that shouldn't be a problem because their construction should be done, I would think, and there'll be a parking lot there. Kind of mixed results or mixed feedback on things like the aid station food. Really, the complaints were you didn't have such and such, or you advertised this and it wasn't there. It was there. It was just in a bin because it was pouring rain, or they didn't see it. So we'll do a better job of putting some signs out and make sure people know what's where. The road portion of the course, that's nobody's favorite. This is a trail run, but you have to run to the trail. Unfortunately, can't fix that. The trail surface, so the trail itself got lots of great comments. Every year I get comments, though, on the surface of the trail. There's portions of it that are pea gravel or large rocks. It's just not conducive to running, or it's not comfortable for running or biking. Not much we can do about that, but I said I would pass it along. The positives, again, the shuttle service, just the general atmosphere. It's laid back. It's meant to be fun. A lot of fun signs along the way. We had some good partnership with Bayside Ford, and of course the volunteers. So next. So there were some challenges, some concerns. Just want to mention the first two I'll put together, and that's the restaurants and the official hotels. This whole event is about bringing for the restaurants, for example, 300 hungry runners, and I'm bringing them right to your doorstep. Mr. Restaurant Owner. But I had a frustratingly difficult time getting them to join the new restaurant program. And all I was asking in return was $100 to help with the advertising. So that was very difficult. Same with hotels. The only official hotel that signed up was Red Roof Inn. And the others just didn't seem interested. So it was very frustrating when I do all the work to bring all the people to them. So I talked with Mr. Minor. We'll see if we can get together and kind of brainstorm on how we can get a better relationship there, a more consistent relationship. The parking access I mentioned. The DRHT final mile, that's a bit of a concern, maybe a question. It's my understanding Mr. David Brickley owns the trail, but only up until that last mile. So that mile between Owens and Sheets, I guess it's owned by somebody else or other individuals. So we're good now, but if they ever change their mind and don't allow the trail on that right of way, then that's certainly a risk to the event. One I definitely want to bring to your attention is the traffic management. So this year what I did, again, there's a 1.5 mile section that you can't avoid. You have to get to the trail. And we had cones along Route 3, and we had signs. We had people with flags on Comorn. So Comorn, there's no shoulder. You have to run in the road. And I was looking at video afterwards, and the runners and the cars were just uncomfortably close. It's just not a safe situation. So I had hoped, and I had asked Vdot to help me actually close a lane of Comorn there. And I guess I was a little surprised, maybe a little naive, but they don't do that. And they were very clear, you have to hire certified flaggers and traffic management companies, that sort of thing. So whatever that takes, I have to do that next year. It's not safe. Nobody's going to come to the event or come back if they don't feel safe. So if you have any ideas there, I'll be happy to take that offline. But that's something that certainly has to be addressed. Not only for my event, I don't know if there's other events like the Fall Festival Parade that run into similar situations in needing to close the lane of traffic. Next. And as far as next year, so year 6, so the only good thing about all the things we had to cancel was I get to just reintroduce them as new for next March. So we'll do that. I'll start that partnership drive early. I'll work with Mr. Minor's office and try to get the hotels and restaurants on board early. I just mentioned the traffic challenges. So as far as the runners go, the biggest change they'll see this year is I'm going to a coupless race. So if you're not familiar with that, every runner will get one of these, just balls up, carry it with them in their pocket. And what this means is we'll be able to avoid 1,000 or more plastic bottles or cups, which are not recyclable because of the wax on the cups. So that's just something I want to do for the environment. That's something you see in trail races more and more. So this will be a coupless event starting in 2023. And the other change will be, I started an ambassador program, and I will continue that with new targets this year. I want to reach out to, or continue reaching out to, the Richmond area, bring some of those runners from the south. I want to reach to specifically Pennsylvania, Altoona, Pennsylvania, that area. That's where Sheets was born. That's where their headquarters is. There are people there that I talked to who came down for this race just because they love Sheets, or because they're in Pennsylvania and they support, anything to do with, this unique event. So I think we can reach out to them and bring people down from Pennsylvania. And then the last two, Black Men Run, Black Girls Run, those are national running organizations or running clubs. I believe the closest chapters are in Richmond. I did reach out to them this year. Didn't get much of a response, but since the race, I found different points of contact, and that looks like it's we can build a relationship there and just increase the diversity of the race. Next. And that is it. I do have, I don't think they made your agenda packet, some additional data. And if I may, I'll leave them with you, Ms. Kupka, because I know you love data and charts and graphs. But I believe that's it. I'll take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Seeing none.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank him. That's, as always, a very thorough presentation. And it's a very good asset to the community. You know, I'm an old runner and old coach, so I appreciate it. And it's nice to see even that many people came,
Right. Thank you.
even with the bad weather. And I like the cup thing. Where'd you find those? They're silicone, right?
They are, I imagine they're silicone. Yeah, they fold up to nothing. I've been to a trail race just last week, in fact, and it was cupless, and they didn't give these out. So I think we'll do a better service to make them as part of the registration process. But yeah, I think that'll eliminate a lot of plastic and trash.
Well, it's interesting you saw this because I've seen wine glasses, I've seen tumbler cups now in that they can fold up so you can carry them anywhere. But thank you again.
Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming out. It looks like Mother Nature gave you lemons and you made lemonade. So thank you for that. Thanks for the data. I gave it to Mr. Miller and he'll have staff make sure a copy gets put in each of our mailboxes for tomorrow. And with regard to flagging, so when I was on staff, we did this lovely tree project along Route 3, and we had to have a certified flagger. If you visit the Vdot website, you can click on a link for Vdot Work Zone Safety Materials and Vdot Flagger training video, and it goes to the ATSSA. And you can get certified for a pretty low cost. So then you'll have your Vdot certified flagger on your staff.
Right. Okay. I'll look into that.
Thanks again.
Also looking into local traffic management firms. I'm sure there are some around. All right.
I just wanted to say thank you, Chris, for coming out. It was this is a great event. It gets better and better every year. And just unfortunately, the weather this year was just the pit. So y'all did a good job with what you can. And, it's surprising. It just goes to show women are tougher than men are, because all the women runners that were there, that was a big surprise. But it just goes to show. And the other thing I want to know is, what kind of pie did you serve?
We had apple pie, we had cherry pie, and we had Little Debbie oatmeal pies. So a variety.
And that was from TAC, and we didn't get a bite?
That didn't come from TAC. That came from Food Lion, actually.
Gotcha.
Sponsored.
All right. Well, thank you again, and look forward to it next year. All right. We're going to move on to department presentations. Miss Hall.
Good afternoon, Chairman Stonehill, members of the board. I'm Heather Hall, Director of Community Development. I'm here tonight to present the Director's Department Report. I know I'm a low talker, I'm sorry. As you can see, our department is small but mighty with 14 positions and divided into planning, zoning, building, GIS, and support staff. Our newest employees since my last presentation include Richard Stewart Jr. as our planner, Heidi Kazmore, permit tech, and Alexis Butchers as our new environmental inspector. As you can see, we've been busy. Fiscal year started July 1, and as you can see, our office has been especially busy with minor subdivisions, major subdivision plats, and boundary line adjustments. As of the end of April in fiscal year 21-22, we have issued 1,209 building permits, 196 single-family dwellings, 2 new commercial buildings, and 164 occupancy permits, with a total revenue of $733,273. With these stats only through the month of April, we have already exceeded last year's total revenue of $470,696. In addition to our regular duties, community development has 2 exciting projects we are currently working on. King George County teamed up with the Berkeley Group to overhaul our zoning and subdivision ordinances, and we have created a website location completely dedicated to the overhaul process. At any time, citizens can access the website and follow along with the process, check on work session documents, as well as draft ordinance sections. As you can see, our current ordinance is very outdated and originally adopted in 1987. Even though it has been amended many times over the years, it has become more of a hindrance rather than a planning tool for staff and citizens. Staff and Planning Commission are particularly interested in updating current permitted uses, creating diversified housing, especially workforce and affordable housing, as well as multiple avenues for small businesses. This new ordinance will consolidate the zoning and subdivision ordinance into one document, and you will find the layout and language proposed will be more user-friendly with updated text, consolidation of like terms, updated terminology in accordance with state law, and a lot of tables and charts for easy review. For example, this chart provides an easy matrix to identify each of the agricultural zoning districts, their minimum lot size, and setbacks for all 3 agricultural districts. The proposed use matrix, which we are currently working on, will also show the definition of the proposed use, cross-reference to the zoning district to show if it's permitted by right, by special exception, or not permitted, as well as the exact ordinance section for the use standards. I think that you will find the proposed layout more organized and user-friendly. We most recently had a work session with the Planning Commission and NSF Dahlgren to discuss the Military Overlay District. We worked on part of our use matrix, definitions, and permitted uses. We will continue to work on these at our June 14th Planning Commission meeting. Our existing uses have been reviewed, simplified, and in some cases consolidated, and we will soon focus on new uses for King George County. Overhauling our zoning and subdivision ordinance is a big overhaul, and as long as we stay on track, we should adopt our new ordinances by summer of 2023, and we are very excited to work with these new ordinances. Our second project is in community development is our new permitting program, Municity 5. During the CIP process, the board approved our request to initiate a new permitting and planning and zoning program. Our office has been making substantial progress towards transitioning to this new system. We have put together a team of staff to work with Municity that consists of someone from each aspect of our department. Currently, we have weekly virtual meetings and trainings as shown on this schedule, with the programming company to learn the new system, tailor it to our needs, and transfer over our existing data. Currently, we are in phase 4 of the transition, which is the last phase before going live with that new system. Municity will also come and do a hands-on training with our entire department. We hope to be up and fully operational by the end of summer. Of course, with any new program, we anticipate an initial slowdown in our process as we learn our new system, so please be patient with us. However, we believe this program will make many tasks more efficient for us as well as applicants in the long run. As you can see, our ordinance isn't the only one from the 80s. The AS400, which is on your right, is similar to an old DOS system. And the left side of the pane will be our new Municity 5. This is a huge upgrade and step in the right direction for technology in King George County and our department. After going live, this new operating system will allow all of our parcel and permit records to be in one concise location. Planning and zoning and building plan review process will all be logged with the same system and can be tracked from application submittal all the way through permit issuance. The new program completes many steps automatically that staff is currently inputting individually. After staff has the opportunity to master Municity, the program will also have a public-facing portal that will allow customers to see the progress of their review. All features that our current program, Bright AS400, does not offer. In closing, we have some pretty exciting upcoming events and community development, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Any questions for Heather? No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up Emergency Services, Chief Moody.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, good evening to you. I will be brief, but I'll also be thorough. No, you've had some long presentations and a lot of business and still have some additional business to take care of. I'm happy and pleased to have joined me tonight Chief Jackson with the Naval District Washington with the base fire department. There's a few themes that I'm gonna hit on tonight. One of these is kind of give you a little overrun, if you will, an annual report of where we ended in 2021. Talk to you about some things of where we're going in the future. Talk to you about some challenges, and then end it with a talk about how we operate in our mutual aid agreements. So just kind of as a recap, many people know that we run calls. That's essentially our bread and butter. That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's why we're here to provide service to the citizens. You know, it's no secret that many people, you hear sirens day and night. You see the fire trucks responding down the road. You see the ambulances going to calls and transporting people to the hospital. I will tell you that in 2021, we had a very busy year. We typically, on average, run about almost about 100 more calls every year than we did the prior year. In 2021, we ran close to 400 more calls for 1 year. We actually broke our 4,000 emergency call mark. We have never done that in the past. There's no time in the history of our county have we received more than 4,000 emergency calls. We've always been in the latter part of the 2000s. 10 years ago, we got into the 3000s. 2021, we ended with 4,101 calls. The last call of the year was roughly about 11:30 p.m. On December 31st, on New Year's Eve. The first call of the year was at 2 a.m. in the morning, and that was incident 1 on January 1st. So you can see just a little breakdown. For EMS calls, we ran 3,687. You can see where we were and where we ended in 2020. This is a breakdown. We transported 2,236 people to the hospitals. Our primary hospital of transport is Mary Washington Hospital. We also transport to the freestanding ER in Lees Hill. We also transport to Stafford Hospital, Spotsylvania Regional, and also some people refer to it as Savista Hospital or Charles Regional in La Plata, Maryland. So that gives you a little breakdown of what where we transport our patients to. We also have, because of that call volume, we also have more money in revenue recovery. In 2020, we ended about $730,000. 2021, we ended a little over $825,000. We had 1,155 fire calls in 2021. Our dollars saved versus dollar lost threshold is $2,833,000 to a little over $1.4 million in dollars lost. I won't read all these, but this is just a little bit of a breakdown of all of our different call types in 2021. EMS calls, you can see 262 motor vehicle crashes, 9 vehicle entrapments, 4 amputations, 333 chest pains, 25 cardiac arrests, 8 suicides, 41 medevacs, helicopter medevacs, 17 OB-related emergencies, 34 overdoses, 71 strokes, 186 unconscious people, 90 seizure calls, 234 falls. 6 gunshot wounds, stabbing calls, 3 motor vehicle accidents with pedestrians. On the EMS call side, we responded to our other neighbors, and this includes also the naval base 44 times, and for EMS calls in 2021. We did 55 in 2020 of this is mutual aid calls that King George County provided assistance to another surrounding community. You can see just in the EMS calls is very busy alone. Fire calls for 2021, 40 brush fires, 23 residential type fires. These are residential structure fire calls, 6 commercial structure fire calls. The AFA are automatic fire alarms. These are the fire alarms people have in businesses and also in their homes. 12 gas leaks, actually 2 elevator rescues in 2021, 12 illegal burns. And as far as fire calls that we have provided assistance to, 38 times in 2021 that we provided assistance to our surrounding counties, 34 the year before. So we saw a little bit of an uptick in 2021 with that. Just recently, there was a 70-foot yacht at the Dockside Marine and Colonial Beach, happened a few days ago. You may have heard about it. King George went out and provided assistance in that. That's a good example of how we provide assistance to our surrounding communities. Just some miscellaneous statistics. Our average response time between EMS and fire calls is roughly right at about 10 minutes. On the EMS side, it's a little quicker at 9 minutes and 36 seconds. Our average on-scene time for EMS is almost 18 minutes. The average transport time from the time we load the patient into the back of the ambulance to the time we get to our hospital destination is roughly a little over 31 minutes. These are averages. Our average hospital time is 43 minutes, and this time is from the time they're at the hospital, they do their business, their report, exchange the drugs, clean the ambulance, receive fuel, get back to the county and they hit the county line is 43 minutes. All in all, from the time a call goes out to the time we get that unit back in service is oftentimes over 2 hours in length. So quite lengthy. Average transported miles is close to 23 miles. Just pulling some of our more heavier locations that we have to respond to. Heritage Hall Nursing Home, we went there 111 times in 2021. Mary Washington Urgent Care, 163 times they called 911 for patients that they were not able to treat, and we had to treat them and transport them to the hospital. Center Care Urgent Care, Dahlgren, a little bit heavier in Dahlgren, 37 times for the year. King George at this location near Company 1, 24 times that we've had to respond there. Our Project Faith community, 87 times in 2021 we've had to respond to Project Faith. Urgent transports, 501. We're seeing an uptick in non-emergent transports. These are folks that may have had an infection. They've been sick for a number of days. They certainly have a healthcare need. There's no question about it. But these, what we would consider more of a non-emergent transport. As far as civilian casualties, six injury. These are fire-related casualties and 1 fire death that occurred in a vehicle. Firefighter injuries, 3 injuries, and then our peak call period times were over 600 calls happened between noon and 3 o'clock in the afternoon during the day. Non-resident transports. These are people that do not live there. They do not reside in King George County. We had to transport those folks, these people, 314 times. So certainly as public safety, our job is not just, and our mission is not just to the resident, it's to the public. And so there's a distinct difference because we have lots of visitors, we have lots of commuters, We have people that come to different events to the county that it was like mentioned earlier. So we have to treat those people with the certainly the same respect, the same response, and provide them the same service. So 314 times of non-residents. This is just a little overview of our operational personnel staffing. As you know, we have here funded 3 positions that started in January. So this is where our staffing levels currently at our stations. 8 around the clock per 24-hour shift at Company 1, 6 at Company 2, and 4 at Company 3. And just for the folks that may be listening online, Company 1 is our station here, what we call our courthouse station. It's across right here on Route 3, across from Food Line, our headquarters station. Our Company 2 is our Dahlgren station. Our Company 3 is our Fairview Beach station. No organization would be complete without an organizational chart. So this is our organizational chart. We essentially have 62 full-time members in our department. We have 10 part-time members, and we have roughly about 28 volunteer members within our department. So it's a fairly moderate-sized department in retrospect to other King George County departments. I put this in here. I've added this before, and this just gives an illustration of the investment that we put in to our firefighters, our EMTs, and our paramedics, because these are real dollars. And these are everything from an employee when they first take the written exam to the time that they start providing service in our community. And employee 1 was a person that we had hired. They've been there for 3 years, 1 month, and 7 days before they were trained and released as an advanced life support provider. The cost, most of these costs come out of that somewhat of a misnomer in our budgets that you see as travel and training expenses. These are the training expenses. The courses that we have to put some of our employees through to become a paramedic. To become a paramedic, for example, is over $15,000, and it's very lengthy. But you can see the price that we invest into these people with uniforms and gear. One person, employee 2, went to a 6-month academy. During that academy, they were being paid as an employee to go to that academy, but they were not providing service until they graduated from the academy and started providing, working shifts and providing service to King George County. You can see in this right here again the training cost little over $33,000, and this is a snapshot from a couple years ago. These expenses have only increased over the years, but it's the investment that we make into our personnel. This is just a quick snapshot. You can see that the calls, the blue is our total calls, the red's the EMS calls, the green below is our transports. You can see overall we may have a little bit of a plateau from year to year. This is a 10-year chart, and you can see this just reflects our county growth. More people, more calls, more transports, more fires, et cetera. Really saw a big, more of an increase in 2018 forward up to 2021. Motor vehicle accidents actually took a little bit of a good news. Took a little bit of a dive in 2021, but you can see that's been fairly steady. Haven't had really much increases. Where we do see things is that when there is when there's more higher velocity car crashes, and with that becomes more significant, more complex injuries that can occur, with that from time to time. Structure fires have taken a decrease in 2021. My goal, I'm very happy with that. My goal would eventually be able to show you a chart of 0 if we get more public messaging out and less house fires throughout the community. With calls, you also get your share of false alarms, and so false alarms also increase. Some of the things that we do, and that a lot of people may not have a understanding outside of running fire and EMS calls, we also manage all local disasters, and we have an emergency management role. Some things that we are involved in that many people are not aware of is certainly the COVID response, but also capturing money, going through the FEMA public assistance and coordinating any times that there's local disaster individual assistance. You can see just one of the things that we recently received. We had a public assistance request from FEMA for $38,000 for COVID. These are funds that we put for hand sanitizer, protective measures, and we had FEMA paid us $28,000, a little over $28,000 on April 25th. So those are monies that are available. I don't believe they have been appropriated for any use. The hazard mitigation project, certainly I know Supervisor Collins and many of you are well aware of this. The Fairview Beach Shoreline project, that was a grant, that hazard mitigation grant that we had submitted through our department. That was $2.33 million. We were also able to secure $36,000 from Vdot for being part of a public road. So that came out to be a 75% federal, 20% state, and a 5% local match. But that shoreline, as you well know, they had a sewer line that really encroached that shoreline. That was probably one major storm away from really doing some significant damage. So that was a lot of very good improvement made to that community. We also get certainly our January storm. I think nobody can forget about that. That was very busy, and we're working with the public assistance with that. Our King George Alert, we manage that. There's close to 10,000 subscribers to KG Alert. That's a way we push out messages immediately. We want to get messages out to folks immediately, even when they're possibly even mobile or driving down the road. Manage official websites and the county website, our website, Facebook, Twitter. We also have access to reverse 911. Where reverse 911, we use hard copper lines, and we can send out, if we had to evacuate, for example, around this area, we could draw a perimeter and it would start blasting out phone calls to those areas. We have brought in since 2009, $3.7 million in grants. So lots of grant monies over the years that we brought into the county that ultimately save in taxpayer money. We've got an active SAFER and assistance to firefighter grant. As you know, we just recently have completed our 4-year update on the county's emergency operations plan. That was approved at, I believe you're at your last meeting. We also manage a shelter plan, an animal shelter plan that we work with the sheriff's office on, a radiological plan, a pandemic plan, a hazmat plan, an Asher plan. An Asher plan, that's currently something that we are refining once again and working with state police and also King George Sheriff's Office and also King George County Schools. Asher stands for Active Shooter and Hostile Event Response. I think certainly it goes without mentioning that's become ever more important in our nation and our community. We also work with the GWRC on a regional hazard mitigation plan, and that is actually in the midst of going out to each community and receiving public comment. So that's a 5-year plan that has to be re-updated. I thought this picture was a nice picture instead of just showing you numbers and words. That's the Fairview Beach Shoreline project as it's been completed. So that's certainly a major project, and that's one of our drones taking that picture as an aerial shot. So. This is a picture, we have in our inventory. This was the January 3rd snowstorm. The picture on the left is our snowplow that was plowing in front of an ambulance, and we actually had to detour on Route 3, and that is at the intersection of Caroline Street and downtown Fredericksburg. We were transporting a high priority OB call where the female patient had a ruptured placenta and was hemorrhaging uncontrollably. And so that call went out during the peak of this event. But we had to detour through downtown Fredericksburg because Route 3 was shut down. The picture on your right is a dash photo of what Igo Road looked like at the time we picked that patient up. So that was Igo Road that morning, and we were clearing trees and trying to figure out the best way to take care of this patient. Fire prevention, we enforce the statewide fire prevention code. We do all state mandatory fire inspections on the schools and licensed daycares. We do fires investigation, arson investigation. We follow up on all the illegal burning calls, all hazmat, all environmental crimes, fuel spills. We review all commercial site plans, subdivision plats, rezoning plans. We are integral part into Community Development's Development Committee as that meets on a monthly basis. We do public education events, and we also have a smoke and carbon monoxide detector program where we'll go in and actually install these detectors in homes and people that need them and financially can't afford them. Some of the challenges we have for our department: staffing, personnel. We're still a number of positions down to where our recommended levels are. Recruitment and retention still going to be an ongoing issue. It is so much better today than it has been in years. And thank you to this board for making that a possibility. Because honestly, we couldn't take care of all those calls I showed you without having the support from this board. So increased 911 calls, meeting the citizens and public expectations, new fire and rescue stations, increased operating costs. I don't think I have to mention a whole lot about that. And also decreasing volunteer participation. We're seeing that pretty much regionally and statewide. It's just, unfortunately, and then the inflation has not helped with getting people to take free time and to take classes and come out and volunteer. It's a struggle. This is our current map of the yellow is our company 1 first due. Our green is our company 2. Our blue is our company 3. Our company 1 is our largest primary response district. It covers 113 square miles, and that's Route 3 from the Westmoreland County line all the way to Route 3 on the Stafford County line. And we cover all the way to the Port Royal Bridge and then halfway up into Dahlgren. Our goal, my vision is, and I've been have made this much a point in the past, is that we split that 113 square miles and we eventually start planting the seeds for a Shiloh fire and rescue station. And I appreciate Ms. Bender bringing that up at the other meeting about that land, because we do have in the past allocated a piece of, looked at a piece of land adjacent to the school bus garage for appropriate site for a company for Shiloh station. That would essentially break up that large response area from company 1 and provide much more timely service to our more southeast Shiloh part of the county. All right, so last but not least, want to just hit on a little bit of mutual aid. We have a mutual aid agreement, and the way we operate is like many other fire and rescue departments in our region. It is not uncommon, and it's a very common practice that you have a mutual aid agreements with your surrounding neighbors. These are who we have immediate mutual aid agreements with, is the Naval District Washington, that being the base fire department, Westmoreland County, Town of Colonial Beach, Caroline, Stafford, City of Fredericksburg, and all of those, we have automatic aid agreements. So if we get a call in the initial alarm dispatch, these units will respond depending on where the call is in the county and depending on what type of call it is. So for example, if we have a structure fire call at Sealston Elementary School or something in that area that's a commercial structure, the city of Fredericksburg tower truck is automatically on that assignment. Okay. If we get a call and it's something closer to Route 205 in the Teetotum area, Westmoreland County and Colonial Beach are on that automatic assignment. The only jurisdiction county we don't have on an automatic aid, and that's partly because we don't have a contiguous land border. We do in the water under the Rappahannock River, but not land and transportation routes, is Spotsylvania County. But we do have a mutual aid agreement with them. Additionally, we also are a signatory into the statewide mutual aid program as well, what we call SMA. That means that if we had a big incident, we could bring in others from even down the Richmond area, et cetera, or Northern Virginia. So this is just a little bit, and I would ask Chief Jackson if you could come up and just say a few words here in just a second. But this is our mutual aid received calls. You can see there's no question, NDW is who we use the most when it comes to who is there to provide assistance to King George County. This is partly and mainly because NDW is in King George County, where there's no other department we have that's actually is in King George. So they oftentimes are certainly called more to help us. This is important to note because if we are busy, a citizen might see where an NDW ambulance 289 shows up there first, or depending where the call is, a fire truck from NDW may get there first. Our goal, and my goal was as the chief of the department, is that during an emergency, you will get the closest unit to handle that emergency. Not necessarily waiting to say, well, they were closer, but the call came to us and we're going to get there. We were three or 4 minutes behind. Those minutes can be so precious that could determine whether somebody lives or dies. It could be determined whether the fire is a small fire or a big fire. So it's very important. We don't necessarily care about the color of the fire truck, what name is on the side. Our goal is to reduce the amount of time and get the closest unit to the emergency as possible. As you can see in Westmoreland, Stafford, most of Stafford are fire responses that we have asked for their assistance on. Caroline, there's Charles County, and then the city of Fredericksburg with the least. Some of this data, I will say, it depends, can be overlapping calls, where if the ambulance goes to the call and also the fire truck goes to the call, sometimes it can be counted as two separate incidences because they're two separate units. As far as mutual aid provided to communities, you can see most of where we go is in Westmoreland County, and coming in second is in Charles County. So the best way I describe mutual aid is to put emphasis on that word mutual. We help you and you help us, and it's a mutual benefit where we can provide service. So we go, for example, talking about NDW, we respond on the base to provide assistance on the base. So if there's a structure fire, if there's a high priority medical call, any event that they would need us to participate, we are there. We respond on the base to provide that service. So I'll just ask Chief Jackson if he could just say a few comments about our mutual aid.
Good evening. I'm Craig Jackson, District Fire Chief of Naval District of Washington, Dalgan, and Indian Head. I oversee both of those installations. I'm one of 6 district chiefs in the region. We have 14 fire stations throughout the region, and I oversee 3 of them, one here at Dahlgren and 3 at, or 2 over at Indian Head. So mutual aid is very, very important for, to me, as well as the, the occupants that, work on the base, as well as the community outside. So I think I come down from JBAB. I was up with JBAB for several years, and I've been down here in Dahlgren for the last 3 years as the district fire chief. And over those last 3 years, Chief Moody and I have definitely built a great relationship. As far as the partnership, working back and forth, and not only running calls but also training together. Because no matter you're running structured fires or medical locals or whatever, you have to train together and be competent with each other to get the job done and save a house or save a life. So I think it's very important to have the mutual aid agreement in place, and we have 3 of them: one with King George, one with Westmoreland, and one with Charles County. But as far as the regional fire department, those 14 fire stations, each one of those stations has mutual aid agreements with their outside their fence lines in the community. So it's I'm echoing what Chief Moody says. Is it's very important to have that mutual aid agreement in place. There's no exchange of funds. It's kind of like a handshake. We help you guys, and you guys help us. So other than that, I think that's it, Chief. I appreciate you letting me come out and speak and pushing forward. So thank you. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just important to bring Chief Jackson here. As you see, we utilize NDW more than any other mutual aid department, and they are in our county. And within, even though it's federal property, it's in King George County. The other reason why I think it's important is because, oftentimes I have, excuse me, I have gotten questions in the past. Hey, I called 911 and I was, my loved one was having a heart attack or something, and I noticed that it was an NDW ambulance that arrived on the scene, and then King George got there several minutes later. That's why I think it's also important to just to for our citizens to know that as well. So our goal is to get the closest unit there in the quickest amount of time to effectively handle the emergency. So I will also say that just to talk a little bit about our relationship with NDW, we actually have a monthly officers meeting, and NDW is a part of that meeting. And we have constant, talk about our operations, talk about calls, or if there's any concerns. And so it's a platform in a venue, where we are constantly exchanging and corresponding with each other. Chief Jackson has my cell phone, I have his, and that's a kind of relationship. We'll call each other on an as-needed basis. But without anything further in regards to mutual aid, that concludes my presentation. I thank you for your time. Sorry it was so lengthy. I know you've been here for a long time already. Happy to entertain any questions that you may have. I know it's a lot of information.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions?
Chief Moody, thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate the thorough report. Chief Jackson as well, thank you for coming out to our community. Thank you for your words, and thank you for the aid you do provide to our community and the relationship you've developed with our fire chief. So I really appreciate that. And Chief Moody, I appreciate that you've worked to facilitate those relationships with all of the community. So thank you. I only had one question really, and it goes way back to the beginning, but you don't need to go there. Okay. So you spoke to the fact that you've seen what I kind of understood, unprecedented increases in calls, because it sounded like it was year over year, you're kind of seeing 100, an extra 100, and then this year was extra 400. Correct. Do you have any insight, and I really like the breakdown of the number of calls and what kind of calls are. Do you have any insight into why that might be, like which kind of calls it is that you saw maybe a significant increase in over the previous year, or do you know what might be the genesis of that situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, I think certainly, our medical calls are, roughly about 75 to 80% of what we do. It's I really can't put a finger on exactly, hey, this is the source. I think it's a culmination of a little bit of everything. I think it's county growth. I think it's increased traffic. I think it's more rooftops. I think it's more, just a little more of everything. I think there's also our society has changed. Used to be years ago, people were not very, wouldn't call 911 unless it was a very significant emergency. Now, if you call your doctor's office or you call, the nurse line and they say, hey, if you're having, anything, a medical emergency, you're to hang up and call 911. And that's a very frequent recording. I think it's a little bit of everything. It's also a fact that our people are living longer. You have more people that have more home health care, and so there's going to be more of a need for us to go out to people that are in their homes, not necessarily at hospitals. Don't know if that answered it, but I think it's a culmination of a little bit of everything.
And I can appreciate it. It's probably a very difficult question to really get to the root of. And so just looking for any insights, and I appreciate it. Like I said, I appreciate the numbers. It really helps us understand, you serve our community. And so it helps us to understand, in order to serve our community, you need our support as well. So to understand, yes, you need continued support in order to be able to provide that service. So it helps us understand, appreciate that. And again, thank you for the service you do provide this community.
Thank you.
I want to say thanks, Chief. Appreciate your very thorough report like usual. Chief Jackson, thank you also, and all of your crew for everything you guys do. I've worked with them on many occasions, and especially in the Dahlgren area. I mean, there's many times that you guys are definitely the first ones there, or even the only ones there, depending on our squads are out of the county. And the guys have been great. Even Saturday morning, first on scene, 3 and 301 at a car wreck, and you guys showed up there first thing. So, I certainly appreciate that. And, I think the public, like you said, a lot of times shows up and they say, well, why is the Navy folks here? And it's like, well, they're the closest ones. Our squads or trucks are out of, the county. So it's, once again, it's a service that we really rely on. And thank you and your guys all again. So, and thank you, Chief, for all you guys do as well.
Thank you.
Ms. Collins?
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief Jackson. I was wondering who you were when you walked in the room.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to put a face to the job. I just want to mention one thing about the mutual aid agreements. You don't really realize how important they are until they affect you personally. 7, 8, 9 years ago, I don't remember what it was. If that mutual aid was not in place, then my son would not be alive today. You know the story.
I do. Yep.
So it didn't, you're right, it didn't matter what it said on the side of the rescue squad. And the reason why there was mutual aid is because King George was busy with many calls on that particular time. But thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you all.
So before we get into the action items, anybody want to take a 5-minute break right quick? Or do we want to push through? Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break here before we get into the action items. All right, folks, let's get back into session here. Action item 604, Department of Finance, certify continued participation in the Virginia Juvenile Community Crime Control Act. Hassan.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The state requires participating jurisdictions to certify that they will continue to participate in the Virginia Juvenile Community Crime Control Act, the VJCCCA, as part of their biennial budget process. In your board packet, there was a plan and information that spelled out their budget for that. And the program funds will be used for the electronic incarceration program, community service work, and supervision plan services. And they are all programs that are allowable under the plan. And your packet was included as well as the budget and the request for us to recertify that we would like to continue to receive these funds over the next 2 years. Were letters of support, one from Dr. Bush, who has been the chair of the CPMT, and also from Vincent, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but the director of the Court Services Unit. So at this time, I ask that you authorize the county administrator to sign the certification form for continued participation in the fiscal year 2023 and 2024 VJCCCA program.
So moved.
Second.
The motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. 605, Department of Finance, accept an appropriate donation for the relocation of the Confederate Monument.
At the Board of Supervisors meeting on May 17th, 2022, the board voted to approve the use of $41,000 from the tourism fund balance pending donations for the relocation of the Confederate Monument to Historyland Memorial Park. At this time, the county has received a donation in the amount of $5,000 to be used towards the cost of the relocation. These funds will be appropriated to the TAC fund to cover a portion of the relocation costs. So at this time, I ask that you authorize the county administrator to accept the donation in the amount of $5,000 and to appropriate the funds to the tourism fund.
So moved.
Second.
Motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. 606, Department of Finance, issue a notice of award for web design and content management.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm here before you this evening in reference to our web design and content management services. In February 2022, procurement staff issued a request for proposals for web design and content management. Proposals were due on March 28th. Proposals were then evaluated by a selection committee, and based on the evaluations, the committee invited the top-rated candidates to interview, after which Civic Plus LLC was determined to be the top-ranked offer. I recommend that the Board of Supervisors authorize the county administrator to issue a notice of award and to execute an agreement with Civic Plus LLC for website design and content management services in the amount of $27,873, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney. Funds for this project are captured in the FY23 operating budget.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes.
Okay, and then the final item that I have for you is in reference to the purchase of a replacement ambulance. On November 9th, 2021, the Board of Supervisors appropriated $280,000 for the purchase of a replacement ambulance in the FY 2022 Capital Improvements Plan. Staff determined the best method for this procurement is through cooperative purchasing using the HGAC Cooperative Contract AM 10-20 with FESCO Emergency Sales. The quote from this contract is $5,058 over the budget, and additional funding from the capital fund will be required to complete the purchase. So the recommended action is that you appropriate an additional $5,058 from the capital fund, and that you authorize the county administrator to execute an agreement with Fesco Emergency Sales for the purchase of a Horton model number 603F ambulance mounted on a 2022 Dodge Ram 5500 4x4 cab and chassis in the amount of $285,058, subject to approval as deformed by the county attorney.
So moved.
Second.
A motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chief, do you have any idea when you're going to see this? $270 days.
270 days.
Okay, thank you. Discussion items, I don't see any. County administrators report.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started because I know you all have been here a while. I gave the Service Authority Board just a notice that we got from the Rappahannock Area Health District that the Fairview Beach monitoring program is going to be discontinued. That's where they sample the water. It has tested without fecal matter in it, so for a number of testing cycles, and they are also having difficulty with their securing people to do it, and so they are asking that we let it go. If it's important to the board or the community, they would probably look to us to take care of that and handle it. So just letting you know, I think that my advice would be see what the community thinks in that area over the course of the summer, or, you know, going forward. And if it's a hot button issue, Mr. Collins obviously would be the one who would be bringing that to your attention if we have to resume it in some way. Also, there's a letter that was attached to some information that you got. It was an email that I received for Vdot doing some traffic counts. I think they just wanted to make sure there was a kind of a full disclosure. If you're seeing some of these traffic count devices throughout the county, that's what they're doing. It's part of their annual or their regular process that they have to do for the statewide system. The next item on there, just capital improvement budget process. So we have actually begun that process. Ms. Hahn has issued the information to all of the departments, and it's obviously the most important element right now is that they get that information into us so that we can get it to the Planning Commission. It has to go to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has to hold a public hearing, and then you all would get that. So we are obviously wanting to try to do the capital side a little quicker from the adoption of the operating budget, but we will keep you posted on that. And I mentioned in the Service Authority as well that we are having COVID committee meetings again. And I know that Chief Moody, knows this, that we are, still having positive cases. I don't know the numbers of any of our employees right now, but within the region, we are obviously having some elevated numbers. It's not going away anytime soon, but we are obviously encouraging our employees to, do all the things that are necessary, get vaccinated if they can or if they choose to. But, we're just wanting you to be aware that things are still out there. So I think that the health districts are saying there's probably going to be a pretty good surge coming on, and that may be just a nationwide surge, but it's something that we are going to experience in the area. Just the natural course of this virus. So, and that's it.
Mr. Chair.
Collins?
So in regards to the Rappahannock Health District notice about Fairview Beach monitoring program, are you saying that they're not going to be doing that program anymore?
They are saying they're not going to have any staff to do that. They have, I believe the way it was phrased to me was they have reached a number of times where they have done the readings, and the readings have come back negative for fecal, which is the biggest concern. And so therefore they are saying they don't really need to continue to do it, and they don't have the staff really to do it. And if we desire to do it, they would probably look to us to underwrite that.
So my only thing is I would suggest or say this, that during this whole COVID things, the schools did all the contact tracing at their own cost that is supposed to be done by the district. So I don't think they should really pull that program when we've footed the bill for this huge response. So
I'm sorry.
Reach out.
We're talking about the beach. Are you talking about COVID testing?
No.
Oh, okay. You're talking.
I'm saying that schools paid a lot of. They hired people. King George County spent a lot of money in doing the work that the health department is required to do by law, and now they're going to drop us on this.
Well, I'm happy to reach out to the Dr. Owasayo and set up a meeting if you would like to.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll do that.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment about that? I just want to caution you that the schools used CARES Act money, it's my understanding, to pay for some of that contact tracing. And if they didn't use what was directly allocated to them, the county in the first allocation sent over $1 million of county CARES Act money, and one of the activities that we provided funding for was contact tracing. So I certainly, I know it went on for a long time and there was a lot of effort and a lot of work. I'm not saying that it maybe was all paid for by CARES Act money, but I'm not sure it's fair to make a comparison between the two activities, because one is a water quality monitoring and safety activity, and the other is a pandemic response activity. So I just think we should look at the bigger picture.
Right. So I'm not disagreeing that pandemic response is more important than that particular, but I am saying that the schools spent a lot of money, not just CARES money, but money to do all the work that the health department is required to do by law that they did not do in the entire state of Virginia. So I just think that if we stepped up and did their job, they should step up and do their job and continue it on. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Granger.
Thank you. What is the requirement for the beach monitoring program? Is it supposed to continue on past this, or has it met the requirement for what needs to be done?
What I was told is that because it has not had any significant readings, that they feel that they could stop doing it. It's met what their requirements would be. So I'm happy to set up a meeting to either have them come to the board and have a discussion about this as a work session, not a work session item, but a presentation, or I can have a meeting set up with Mr. Collins and let Mr. Collins report back, since it is in his district, I understand the concerns that people might have.
So there was no documented requirement for how long it would need to go on, or for what the end game was, or in regards to how long it need to continue?
Not necessarily. It was, we've been doing this and we've been having negative readings, so we don't think you need to do it anymore. And by the way, we don't have the personnel really to do this anymore. And I said, well, that's your call, but I will let you know that if the board of supervisors thinks that it's a concern, then we're going to need to sit down and talk. So
there were advisories last summer with Fairview Beach. So to say it was zero issue is not really
what they're saying. If I can interrupt, is that it's animal. It's animal. That's what the issue is. It's not human fecal. So it's not, kids or human beings in there that are causing that. It's not the sewage or anything like that. It's basically the animals that live in the runoff and things like that. So I think that it would be worth to have them come, and I'm happy to set that up.
I would like to have them come and speak to us. I mean, this is, Mr. Collins, I mean, feel free if you want to do a meeting, just you guys is fine, but here we are getting ready to go into our busiest time of the season at Fairview, and we've had these, years after years after years, and regardless of whose vehicle it is, animal or people, I mean, to me, since that has been a hot spot over the years, I mean, I think they should, at least come speak to us or speak to Mr. Collins in a meeting here or something. Sure. I mean, since it is such a problem over the years, I think they should be at least, every now and then checking it, as opposed to, we have to wait until somebody gets sick and then after the fact go in there. If this was October, I don't think I would be overly concerned about it, but since we are getting right in, we're just at the start of our summer season, so. Sound good with everybody?
I'll reach out to them and ask them to come to a future board meeting.
Thank you. That's all you got? Okay.
I move to adjourn until Wednesday, June 15th at 6 p.m. in the boardroom.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussions?
Just so run through the dates one more time for me, because I put them in my calendar, but I'm not sure I was accurate.
So June 14th is being moved to June 15th.
Right, June 15th.
Which will be 6 in this room.
Right.
And then June 21st is being moved to June 22nd at 6:30. I assume still 6:30? 6:30? And well, I assume
you could set it up at an earlier time if you want.
Service Authority will not be.
No, the Service Authority is still meeting on the 21st. They chose to meet on the 21st at the sheriff's office.
Understood. But we'll need.
They had a public hearing that's already been advertised as the rates, and the feeling was let's not change the date.
Okay, that's fine. So yes, so it'd be June 22nd at 6:30 in the boardroom.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.